Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Awaken Your Soul's Journey podcast. I'm Angela and so happy that you could take the time to join us today. I have Kelli Malcolm here with me. She is my special guest and she is the founder of How to Live Your Life Fully, which helps people navigate life's challenges through holistic coaching and tarot wisdom. And she is a practicing family law attorney, a certified life mastery consultant, a gifted tarot card reader, and the author of Sidestepping the 12 Steps Using Metaphysical Principles to Move Beyond Addiction. And so, thank you for taking the time. We did this once.
Yes.
We had some technical difficulties that sometimes happens. And so, I appreciate you taking the extra time to do it again. And I'm so excited that I get to be with you again until I yeah.
Well, good morning, Angela. And yes, it's Mercury retrograde is upcoming, so that could be part of these technical difficulties, right?
Yes. And actually, in between there, Kelli did a tarot reading for me, and it was super accurate and profound. And so I want to thank you for that and let people know that this is tried and true.
Yes. 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 I've been doing tarot card readings since I was 12, and the cards came to me. I lived in a small rural town. I have no idea how I got my first deck, but they just spoke to me in a language that I could make sense of my outer world as well as my inner world, the thoughts I was having and how to move forward. And so when I was in high school, I was the geek that was in the proms giving everybody tarot card readings. And it just progressed from there. I've been on psychic sites, and on my website, I have where people can go and book a tarot card reading. And they're very helpful because I think they provide insights, and there's things that we know about ourselves and other people do. But then there are things that other people know about us that can be our blind spots. And the tarot helps reveal those blind spots and also the unknown, things that nobody knows, but something to keep a watchful eye on that could be upcoming. And with any tarot reading, time is fluid and we make decisions. And those decisions can affect the course of our direction of our life. So it is a snapshot in time of, given the circumstances, this is how it appears. But you always have the ability to change the outcomes. So it's, a lot of times people want it to be predictive. Is this going to happen? And like in law, it depends. It depends on your thoughts and then what actions you take based upon those things.
And it's interesting. I get on YouTube sometimes and I listen to the predictions. I'll find my sign, the Cancer sign, and then they'll do predictions and I'll listen to multiple ones. And it's surprising how the same cards come up from different people. Like I've been experimenting with this and just kind of, I guess I knew that in a sense, but it just wowed me. Like, I don't know how many I listened to, and I was just wowed every time that the similar messages that were coming through. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and it is. And I'm part of different psychic groups, psychic tribes. And when we join and get together, spirit reveals different nuances of what's coming. And then when we put it all together, we see a much bigger picture. But what's happening is, I think a lot of people are tuning in and picking up on the same universal energies. And then depending on the individual, you're wired differently. So spirit will talk to you about how do you deal with these energies. A Cancer, because you're a water sign, is going to have more of the emotions that you'll need to deal with. Whereas you might be Capricorn, and that's an earth sign, and there's different strategies. I'm a Leo, we're fire, and so we can feel the energies really intensely. And it's how do you ground, at least for us.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and that's all so interesting and fascinating and helpful. I
Yeah.
find it really helpful to get some kind of background understanding. It's not like you're going to base all your decisions off of that, but it's good to have that advice or knowledge when you're going into some kind of situation. And I don't know, I think it provides a little bit of comfort too. To
I
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it can, Angela. And when I started reading the tarot cards, that's what kind of started opening doors about spiritual principles
Mm.
and why learning spiritual principles and how to apply them to your life is essential for your growth and for well-being. And that kind of laid the foundation for my coaching. It lays the foundation for everything because everything's law, whether it's practicing law, which is man-made law, or spiritual laws, it's learning how to apply those laws for your benefit. And so one of the biggest laws, the first one that I learned was I am. It's known as first cause. There's different names that people give it, but how you define yourself is huge in terms of how you're going to know and then what actions you take, because there's something known as the results formula, which goes like this. It says your thoughts cause your feelings. And you know this, how do you feel when you think you lost your wallet or your phone? Panic, right? And your mind stops thinking and, you start thinking about all the worst case scenarios, right? Then how do you feel when you find it? It's in your back pocket or it's right under your nose. Your phone was sitting there all the time. You relax, and the feelings are what cause our actions. And when you're feeling energized, when you're feeling optimistic, you take different actions than when you're feeling sick, hungover, depressed. And it's the actions then that cause our results. So, what it really is your thoughts are the source of your results. Whereas most times people flip it and they look at their circumstances, they look at their conditions, and they call those things their causes when they're actually their becauses. I can't start a new job because I'm not sure what I want to do, because I don't have the money. I can't take time off because I haven't banked enough PTO. And all of those are results of what you've been thinking, and I say to clients, I said, it's the quality of the questions that you're asking yourself. And this might be where my law pops in. Lawyers ask questions, and you need to ask good questions to get to the heart of the matter. So you can ask yourself, how do I make $10,000? Or how would I make $10,000 if I was in France for 2 weeks? You're going to get totally different ideas. So a lot of the coaching and the training that I do deals with this results formula, helps people ask questions, and helps people define themselves because most times people will define themselves as a problem. Well, we're not a problem. Or they'll define themselves as objects. you know, I'm, I'm worthless, but worthless, they usually put in an object, that isn't flattering. Let me put it to you that way, make it YouTube friendly. Sometimes they'll define themselves as the relationship status on what they have on Facebook. I'm married, I'm divorced, but that's not who you are. And who you are the values that you follow. And so when you align your values with thoughts, then you get different feelings and you'll take different actions.
Yeah, and I really resonate with the fact that we can get stuck in what we consider facts. Well, I don't have money or I am broke. And so I can't change that. It's like that. Well, it just is, right? And being in that space of realizing that it's not the external factors that are influencing this, it's what we are thinking about it and the stories that we're telling ourselves. Yeah, when you flip that on its head, and it's not easy to do because when you've spent a whole life living in that scientific place where this is the fact, this is the way it's and thinking that you're a victim to everything that's happening to you on the outside. It's all because of someone did this or this happened to me.
Mhm.
It's hard to flip that the other way.
It is. And you said so many thoughts popped in. You said to me,
Mm-hmm.
things are happening with you. They're happening with your consent. And when you talk about facts, it's very interesting because of practicing law. There is one quote fact that a client will tell me, but then when I listen to, say, their ex, and you listen to their children, and you listen to their friends, that no longer remains a fact.
Mm.
We have, you can just think of driving and accidents. You pulled out in front of me. No, I had the right of way. The right light was red, yellow. Yeah, people perceive things differently. And part of the growth and the training is using what I call your 6 higher mental faculties, one of them being perception. When you change, and Wayne Dyer has got a great quote, when you change the way you see things, the things you see change. So when you take things and you change perspectives, and there's a lot of teaching that goes around it, you can gain insight, insight into yourself, move to a different viewpoint, and be able to take different actions because you're thinking from a different viewpoint. It's also known as a different frequency. And it's interesting because I can share a story. When I was younger, a lot younger, I had come home and my husband, I found out, was having an affair with our nanny. And my daughter was 7 months old. And that was not a value that I was going to accept. So I left and I had 1 penny in my bank account. I was not practicing law because I was licensed in New York and I was living in Colorado. So it wasn't like, oh, you have this big job. No, I did not. I was hourly salary. I went and talked to a friend because I was emotionally upset. She offered me her couch. I had a buggy, a stroller for my daughter to sleep in. And I had a choice. You know, I could go back and be miserable and know this isn't my path, or I could ask Spirit, what is the next step I can take to move forward, to be able to support myself and my daughter? And I had to face a lot of fear. And I had to trust that the universe has my back. And so I went to work. I found out I could do overtime. Yes, you could bring your daughter in her buggy to work. I didn't have a workable vehicle. Somebody at work had like a $300 stick shift car, but it didn't go in reverse. I said, great. I didn't know how to drive a stick shift, but I thought this is part of the learning process. And not going in reverse is very helpful in parking lots. So see, it's a different perspective. And it turned out that I was working for collections, which is really nasty kind of work, right? Trying to get people to pay their bills. Well, one of my clients offered me a job that provided benefits and a career path up. And I ended up, having a corner office and 170 employees. But that was spirit saying you have to take the first step. And to me, it's a committed decision where no, I'm not going back to that. As it turned out, when I went to try and get divorced from my husband, I found out he already had a wife and a child in Virginia. This was before internet, before you could, who would think to check this stuff, right? I didn't. And I looked at that and I said, my gosh, that was a blessing. I dodged a bullet, right?
Yes.
So it depends on your perspective on how things go. But I do know with spirit that spirit asks you to make a commitment. It never asks for more than you can do. It knows what you can do a lot better than you do. And was I scared? Absolutely. But it was like, no, these are my values. I'm going to move forward somehow, some way. Now, looking back, I would have had no idea that somebody else would have, provided a job. But that was spirit.
Yeah. What an amazing story. I'm glad you told
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, it's one of many. And I can share stories from clients. But, Angela, people live their life either by default or design. Default are the people that take it as it goes. They're the ones that, well, I'll just wait and see what happens. They want to stay in their comfort zone. They want green lights all the way down their street when they're backing out of their driveway. They want to know the how, right? Then there's this group, and it's a small group that lives their life by design. And when you live your life by design, you say, this is what I want. For me, I wanted to be in a relationship that was faithful. Faithfulness is a key, core value, right? Loyalty, that's a core value. And I'm going to choose that. And so you make a committed decision, which means you're not saying, if this, then I'll do. It's not an if then. I'm in, 100% in. And you cut the ties so you can't go back, right? And when you make that committed decision, then spirit opens up the next step for you to take. And spirit never shows you the whole path. They don't use big lights. It's the next step you need to take, and you're developing trust. You're starting to use your higher mental faculties. Perception's one, intuition is a huge one. And teaching people to rely upon their intuition, whether it's that gut instinct. And you can start small. Sometimes spirit throws you in and you have to start a little bigger than what you wanted, right? But it's making that committed decision and recognizing that fear and failure go along with success. They walk hand in hand. It's just who's in control. So a lot of times with fear, when I feel fear, I put fear over in the passenger seat because I'm still going to move forward. And there's so many great stories about people that have experienced failure before they experience great success. Starbucks, Howard Schultz was his loan application for Starbucks was rejected 242 times. because the banks couldn't see a market for this type of coffee. He had the vision. He could see Starbucks on every corner. And just because somebody else can't see your vision doesn't mean it's not your vision. Spirit gave you that vision. They didn't give the bank that vision. Maybe the 242nd bank they did. So it's not like you wait until fear's gone. You'll be dead. You can't, fear is part of the journey. And you can befriend your fear. You can listen, but it's listening with your intuitive voice, not listening with your limiting paradigms.
Yeah, and I like what you said about failure going along with success, because sometimes things go wrong and then we start right away to think, well, that's it. I'm not meant to do it when we don't persist through it. And I think there is something to the intuition, because sometimes you just know, okay, that's the wrong path. I need to take a different path. And sometimes you need to persist, or you need to keep trying.
Mm-hmm. Or try a different way. I think it was Edison when he was doing the light bulb. I think it was 10,000 attempts. And they said, how did you deal with all those failures? And he looked, and here's perception. He said, those weren't failures. It was feedback. And that's what we're receiving is feedback. There's many paths to the top of the mountain, but the view is the same once you get there. So just because one way didn't work, it doesn't mean that that goal that you have isn't your goal or you're not destined to have it. It just means maybe this person isn't the right person, not the one for you on the path. Maybe the thing that you're avoiding is what spirit wants you to develop and work with.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So, your book, Sidestepping the 12 Steps, Using Metaphysical Principles to Move Beyond Addiction.
Yeah.
I know that addiction can be a way that we will numb our emotions and keep ourselves from feeling some of the things that have been sitting in us maybe for some time. Tell me a little bit about your book and the principles in your book.
Sure. How the book came about was a download from Spirit. The title, that was Spirit. How is when I wrote the book, it was way back in like 2010, 2011, so quite a while ago. And I had been representing abused and neglected kids. And most of the time, their parents were substance abuse issues, whether it was drugs or alcohol, but the substances were interfering with their ability to provide stability for the kids. Mm-hmm. And in the court system, they would send them to programs, and they didn't work. And in fact, the rehab rate back then, I don't know what it is today, but back around 2010, it had an 85% failure rate. So I'm like, something's wrong. And so when I started looking at the principles, the biggest one is they were defining themselves as a problem, as a disease. And the mind thinks in pictures. So when you think of someone as an alcoholic, images come to mind of homeless people, bums under the street. It's not a positive self-image. And they have to keep going to meetings and keep reinforcing this negative self-image. And the goal is sobriety, which is a pathway. It's not a goal, it's a pathway. So I looked at that and I said, that's where one of the principles comes in the book. I am. Define yourself as your values. For me, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. But the I'm a problem, will not move you past the problem. And so that was one of the guiding things. It's not a matter of, and I've spoken to a lot of therapists. I said, it's not that you're denying your behavior, you're denying a definition. And once you start doing that, then you start practicing, I got the spirit, AA, affirmations, and appreciation. So those were the acronyms. And affirmations are those I am statements, I can statements, putting things into the positive and then taking action based on those statements. The appreciations is gratitudes. And what's really interesting is since I wrote that book, you had the positive psychology movement that developed around 2012 that is taking these same principles. And you have other alternate recovery groups that are using these same principles. So, I'm not an opponent of the AA principles. I think they need to be expanded. And I think a refreshing could happen. I think there's a lot of wisdom in having support. But relying on a meeting is not relying on yourself and your 6 inner faculties to move you forward. Mm. And for me, addiction it's on the behavior is because of emotional inflammation. There are feelings that you don't want to deal with, but those feelings are tied to thoughts, which could have been created by trauma. And so a lot of times, kids that grow up, say in a foster home, they can experience a lot of trauma. And because it's really hard to process, they will turn to substances because they can't deal with it. So sometimes it's getting to those underlying trauma issues and working through them. Sometimes in the spirit, the woo-woo world, they call it your shadow side. But it's working on those, and it doesn't come overnight. And the other thing is it's progress, not perfection. And so with the addictions, and sometimes, I have to start counting all over again because I took a drink. Well, it makes people go back to square one and they give up. So stop counting. Because when you're counting, what you're doing is keep thinking about it'd be so nice if I had a drink or if I had, this drug or that. And it's like, well, what else would be nice? Would it be nice to wake up in the morning and walk your dog and feel great about it? Would it be nice to have a good night's sleep? So you can flip a lot of those, but I don't think the counting is very helpful because I think it sets people back and it's like an artificial goal where your goal is growth and your path to grow was facing addiction. Some people's path to grow is facing loss, family loss of a spouse, loss of a parent, loss of a child. There's all different paths to grow, but you need to move beyond and not be stuck in that, I guess, that pathway. You have to move beyond because after that, there'll be another one that you get to grow on.
Yeah, for sure. And that really does bring things home and back to the whole issue of grief and not that it's an issue, I call it that, but like you say, we need to embrace it because it's a way of healing and it's the way that we grow. And I'm finding that as I move through it more and more and more, I can see the way that the stories that I was telling myself, the wounds that have come up for healing through this process, and it just gets you to recognize who you truly are inside as a person. And the more you discover that, well, and it's surprising sometimes. I mean, I can't even believe some of the stuff that I'm doing right now and enjoying, right? It's shocking, but I never really fully understood, and I probably still don't. I'm going to be constantly learning more about who I truly am through this life and through these challenges that you talk about that we get to grow from.
Well, and that spirit is always seeking growth. And if you think about it, when you're walking and you see those blades of grass popping through sidewalk cracks, even in the most difficult circumstances, there's life. Or I've always wondered, how does a tree grow on a rock? But yet it does. And spirit wants us to grow because, as you've just shared, Angela, the joy that you have in finding out I can do this and that much more, and my life is so much more full. And going back to my business, you're living your life fully because you're expanding and experiencing so many things that you would never even have thought about.
Mm-hmm. And I liked also what you had said about the affirmations and then the actions, taking the action, because lots of times I will wake up in the morning and, feel kind of rough. And then the next day you feel kind of rough. And the next day you feel kind of rough. And then at some point you have to say, you know what? Why am I feeling this way? And is this what I want? Because, you know, we can change it. We think we're stuck in it, but we're not.
No, In fact, one of my morning practices is that before I get out of bed, I check my thoughts and I think about what can I do today that's going to bring me joy, going to be happy. And you can flip your framework. Other people, and one technique that I've heard about is people will put something by their bedside, something that's memorable to them, meaningful. It could be crystals, it could be a stuffed animal, anything. And tactily feel that, feel what it feels like so that, oh, I remember, I really, I use crystals. And boy, when I found that crystal, I was so excited.
Mhm.
And it changes how you spend your day. If you just take the first 10 seconds or so before you get into your activities and your habits.
Yeah. Yeah, I truly believe that. And not grabbing the phone. It just seems like, well, that seems like a natural thing, right? You grab that, you check your messages, but you've taken yourself now right out of and I did that. I did that for a long time. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, my phone stays in my office. When I go to bed, I go to bed, right? But I have daily habits. That's the first one, is to waking up and thinking about what good can I do? Another habit I have is what can I do in 5 minutes that'll move me towards my dreams, my goals, whatever they happen to be. And it's interesting because people will say, well, 5 minutes isn't that long. But if you listen to somebody give a speech and they stop talking for 5 minutes, you start getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
5 minutes is, you can do quite a bit in 5 minutes. I journal. I'm a big proponent of journaling. And so my morning routine is after I feed my animals, I journal. And I write down, I call them my to be statements, but those are my I ams. And then I write down my gratitudes. What am I grateful for? And what are my thoughts? So I can kind of catch them before they catch me. Mhm.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I know people are going to love what we've just talked about here. And I know they're going to want to catch up with you, find out more about you, and maybe even work with you. So, how do they get a hold of you?
I think the best way is if they go to my website, Angela, which is www.live, L-I-V-E, life, L-I-F-E, fully, F-U-L-L-Y, .net. That's my website. And on my website, I have FAQs, and free resources, so they can go and check that out. They can book a tarot card reading under my tarot tab. They can learn about the coaching and book a free strategy session. And I also have quite a few blog articles. And currently on my website, I'm offering a free guide on how to master your mindset. So if they provide their email address, then they can download the free guide. So there's lots of different ways, and I would love to connect with anybody that this conversation resonates with and just help them on their path, because it can be fun and exciting. It's scary, but it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there anything else you want to add before we go?
I think just, because of the energies that we're moving into, grounding is really important for every sign, for everybody. Take some time to disconnect from the news cycle and from who's saying what and what's happening. And just, whether it's walk, whether it's gardening, whether it's a 5-minute meditation, make sure you do some self-care because I think we're going to need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, that 5 minutes is huge. So,
You can totally rewire your mindset in 5 minutes. Yep.
absolutely. Well, thank you again for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me back, and hopefully we'll be able to talk again soon.
Absolutely. And thanks
Okay.
everyone for watching, and bye for now.